Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Benjamin Males and I am an engineer and designer born and bred here in London. And thank you Linda so much for having me here to your design dinner. This is a picture of me putting Lady Gaga into a fly dress. But I'm going to come back to that because first I want to take us on a little bit of a history lesson back to 1960s, and it's actually May the 1st, 1960, and this gentleman here, Francis Gary Powers, was shot down over Russia while flying a spy mission for the CIA. Now he survived, but it obviously created a lot of tension, a lot more tension than there already was between the East and the West. You see, he was flying this aircraft here, it's a U-2 reconnaissance plane, and up until this point the idea was that these planes would fly high enough that they wouldn't be seen and couldn't be shot down. Unfortunately for Gary, the Soviets had developed new weaponry that could actually shoot these aircraft down. And this is an example. It's a surface-to-air missile called the S-75, and it was almost definitely used to shoot down Powers' plane. And this is a big problem because surveillance was very, very important during the Cold War. For example, during the Cuban Missile Crisis, it's photographs like this one that proved that the Soviets were building missile silos in Cuba that could directly hit the USA. And what it did is it helped to open up dialogue between the two parties and avoid all-out nuclear war. So they needed a solution, we needed a solution, and the solution came in the form of this. This is the SR-71 reconnaissance plane, also known as the Blackbird. And this aircraft, I think, is beautiful. I don't know whether anyone remembers Airfix models. They're basically plastic models that you put together and you paint, and they were very popular with boys back in the 90s, I guess. Well, I was really into them, and I was very lucky in that my dad bought me one of these when I was 10, and I built it and I fell in love with it. I thought it was the most beautiful thing ever, and I still think it's one of the most beautiful objects known to me and known to man. And I could talk about this plane forever, but I'm going to tell you one thing about it. It flies 3 times the speed of sound. And you can see this in the way it's designed. I mean, it's like a big rocket-powered dart. It's a beautiful thing. And this was key to its superpower. So its superpower was that instead of trying to make itself invisible or trying to make itself more acrobatic to avoid being hit by missiles, it just flew faster than the missiles, and therefore none of them were ever shot down. A bit later on, a few decades later, this aircraft came into service. This is the F-117 Nighthawk, but it's also, you'll probably know it as the stealth fighter. Now this aircraft wasn't as fast as the Blackbird. It didn't outfly missiles. It did something else. It had another secret power. The secret power lies in its shape. Actually, it has a very small radar cross section, and that's literally the size it appears on a radar. It's so small, in fact, that it looks more like this. This is just a single bird flying around the sky. And you can imagine that if you're up against Soviet radar-guided missiles, you want to look like a bird, you don't want to look like a plane. There are a load of other aircraft in this category, these stealth, highly advanced aircraft, and they all have one thing in common. They're all built and designed at Lockheed Martin's Skunk Works. Now, Skunk Works was and still is a legendary development group that secretly develops some of the world's most advanced aerospace technology. And we're used to the word Skunk Works, and this is where it comes from. This is actually where it originates. And the key to the Skunk Works success is that they understood that if you get the right mix of people in a room, put designers and creatives next to mathematicians, engineers, then amazing things could happen. You could make aircraft invisible. And Skunk Works was a great inspiration for me, and I applied it to my life quite literally. I went to Imperial College and I studied these. Mechanical engineering focused on the design of nuclear reactors, and this is a pressurized water nuclear reactor. Just as a side note, in the movies you see nuclear reactors glow, and they actually do glow. They actually look like that. Imperial College used to have a research reactor, and I was lucky enough to play with it. I then went straight to the Royal College of Art to study design products under the famous architect and designer that some of you might already know, Ron Arad. All the time planning how I'd build my own Skunk Works. And then a few years later I met Nancy, my now co-founder, and before I knew it, we had set up a company called EXO, a wearable technology company that was born from a project with the Black Eyed Peas. and the project involved building them display costumes. Now, I wasn't expecting to end up working in fashion. An engineer who can design and create actor and has a good working knowledge of Swedish furniture just doesn't have a place in fashion. At least you might think. But actually, when you add technology to the mix, it makes perfect sense. You see, the human body is unruly. It moves, it sweats. It's an engineering nightmare, and engineers all love a good challenge. So for the next 8 years, we built some of the world's most high-profile work. We did all kinds of things, including building laser apparel that wirelessly connected and linked to the DJ, so we could fire lasers on the drop of a tune. Pure digital ecstasy. We made sensory wristbands for Saatchi Saatchi. We could actually measure how you feel. We tapped into the sympathetic nervous system and measured the only metric you can't control with your mind. That's electrodermal activity. And of course, we made a flying dress. So this dress is called Volantis, and it's what's known as a Hex 12, and that's 6 arms with 2 rotors per arm. It was made from carbon fibre and titanium and produces over 1/4 of a tonne of thrust. So we worked with Lady Gaga for over a year, and this was the grand finale. And it really came about because I just wanted to make a flying machine. And why not a flying dress? At the time, it was right at the beginning of this new trend that we're used to now of drones doing everything in our lives. We did a bit of research, and the largest drone we could get commercially could carry around 50k. So I was estimating, trying to work out what Gaga weighed. Bit of contingency. I thought surely we could strap a few drones together, see what happens. In the end, he actually created a true Skunkworks team, from an engineering officer who'd served on a nuclear submarine to a weapons guidance system engineer for the control system, working with a team of leading fashion designers and machinists. But the best bit of all was where it was made. Now, from what I've already told you, you can probably guess what my favourite film is. Yeah, you guessed right. My favourite film of all time is Top Gun. And here, for even more proof of how much I love Top Gun, this is me hugging an F-14. And for any of you that know the film, the aircraft in it is the F-14. So the original Top Gun, the actual real Top Gun, was a flight school, advanced fighter flight school, and it was in the desert just outside San Diego in a place called Miramar. And we built Volantis down the road from Miramar. How amazing is that? So we had firm belief that we could do anything, and we kept ourselves really busy with some really great projects. But in the last 3 years, we focused on commercialising what we started with music artists. And most recently, we launched the first app-connected streetwear brand targeting the Gen Z consumer, and they're the under 25s. I'm going to come back to them in a minute. But first, I want to share some reflections that I've had of 8 years working on the front line of wearable technology. So I like to look at trajectories to see where they're going. I like to think about almost a virtual line, look at things that have happened before, look at things that are happening now, and you can kind of start to speculate what happens in the future. And I'll explain what I mean. So let's take wearable technology, wearable computing. They literally started as computers were machines that were in rooms, and they were made of gears, and they were made of pinions, and they chunked away calculations. The invention of the transistor meant that you can miniaturize this and it could be completely electrical. It means that you can start to have computers that are on a table or a desk. It wasn't long before it moved to laps, and then of course inevitably moved to pockets. Now it's on our wrists. Now where is it going next? It's not difficult to see that it's going to end up on our bodies. I mean, already research in flexible and stretchable electronics is happening and has shown that this is possible. This is a real prototype. And of course, then it goes inside the body. And these guys here, they're kind of, they're self-modification enthusiasts, but they're already using, Philips have developed a pill that is electronic, and you actually take it and it does measurements inside your body. You can do this exercise, this trajectory exercise, in almost any area, and I've just chosen some here. Automated vehicles, social media, mixed reality, software as a service. The thing is that all these trajectories I've noticed come together. They all end up in one place, and I call this the digital physical ecosystem. This is literally where computation is in the fibre and fabric of everything that we have around us. Now consider, so we'll go back to these Gen Z consumers. Now consider that for the first time there's a generation of people that have never known a world without ubiquitous internet or smart devices. So if you were born after 1996, you don't actually know what it was like without the internet. So imagine how the world changes as this generation grows and becomes the consumers of tomorrow. And I'd argue that our science fiction, like Ready Player One, is not fiction for someone under the age of 25. It's just a prototype for the future. And we saw this firsthand when we launched our fashion brand 2415 at the end of last year. I spent a lot of time talking to investors over the years, and it's always been difficult for them to share our vision for a future where technology is in the things that we wear and in ubiquitous in everything that we have. So we launched 2415 with a party attended by Gen Z, and that is these under 25-year-olds. No one questioned me. No one questioned how it worked. It was just accepted that clothes now change colour and animate to music, and you can see some of the pictures from social media. There are other great examples of how Gen Z are changing the world. It's easy to think about social media, but also think about gaming. So e-gaming has become a sport. So these young generation of kids, they come together in stadiums where we would normally see traditional sports like football or soccer, are now filled with people watching other people play computer games. But you can also see changes in the physical. So for example, in China, it's been observed that the age group 18 to 26 are most likely to buy a car online. So car brands are striving to kind of merge the digital and physical to attract these young consumers. And here's a car vending machine that Alibaba set up in China to attract Gen Z consumers. So I think in short, what I observe is that we are living in a world which is more ready than ever for making science fiction science fact. And I think that drawing on some of the principles of Skunkworks, we can bring together a rich combination of technology and art to create something really special. Now imagine if everyone in this room, imagine if we created our own Skunkworks. I don't know what we'd make, but I'm pretty sure it would be truly magical. Thank you so much for listening. I've been Benjamin Melks.